Howdy, friends. I am sitting here on the beach of Lake Yellowstone. I got a little campfire going, as you can see, reflecting on the end of my Xanterra era. If you've been following my short form content, you know that I've been doing seasonal work at Yellowstone National Park for the past 2 months now. And I've created a handful of short videos talking about my experience, my thoughts on the whole prospect of seasonal work, something that I've thought a lot about doing, wanted to do for a long time. I watched a lot of YouTube videos while applying and deciding whether or not I wanted to do this whole seasonal work at Yellowstone through Xanterra thing. Now that I've done it, what are my takeaways? The job that I was doing while I was here was mostly dishes. I was cleaning dishes or pots and pans in the kitchen, back of house, 8-hour shifts, 5 days a week, and then you get 2 days off to explore and do whatever you want. So that was my job, 8 hours a day of scrubbing dishes. Not the most fun or the most glamorous work. It certainly was a shock to the system for me, something I was not used to. Previously, I was more accustomed to doing creative type work. My biggest, longest term day job was working as a graphic designer at a mega church, a job that I have a complicated relationship with. And in one sense, I loved it. I enjoyed it so much. It was so cool to be able to just sit on the computer and work in Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and just make graphics all day. So much fun. So cool. On top of that, it was pretty cushy, and that there was like a couch in the office. There was free snacks and coffee. We would have meetings pretty regularly. Oftentimes the meetings were pretty nebulous, and we would sort of spend 45 minutes talking about nothing. But even still, I got paid just to sit at a table and drink coffee and eat donuts at all of these meetings that could have been an email. Pretty sweet corporate bullshit. This job was not like that. This job here, working in the kitchen at Xanterra, was closer to what you might call grunt work. It was a little bit more strenuous, a little bit more labor intensive, a little bit more disgusting. And that was quite an adjustment for me personally. I believe a lot of my coworkers were more accustomed to this type of work. A lot of them had worked in kitchens before. A lot of them had worked in fast food, and were saying, like, if you think this is bad, you should see what it's like in the kitchen at Taco Bell. This is heaven. So in that sense, for me personally, it was a humbling experience. Truly, I feel like maybe I learned something about myself beyond just the idea that I don't really like doing dishes in the kitchen, because who does? This was the job that I was assigned and stuck with. There's a multitude of jobs that you could land at Xanterra especially if you have experience, like working as a cook or in hospitality. You're much more likely to get a job that's a little bit easier or a little bit less, less unpleasant than dishes. You could be front of house working as a server or as a bartender, working in the coffee shop. Back of house, you could work as a cook, which from what I've heard from my coworkers who are cooks, that job is more stressful, so more unpleasant in that sense, but it's also perhaps more creatively challenging, more dynamic, and possibly more enjoyable in that sense. Beyond that, the accommodations include housing, so you stay in dorms, you have a roommate. The dorm situation was, I don't know, it was fine. You know, I was moved to a different dorm at one point, so I had 2 different dormitory experiences, 2 different roommates. Both of my roommates were totally fine, chill people. We got along fine. It reminded me of freshman year of college, I suppose. That was the closest analog to dorm life that I experienced, where it's just a room with 2 beds, you and your roommate, and then you have like a shared bathroom and living area. The first dorm that I was in, we had mice in the dorm. We'd see them scurrying about, and we'd try to catch them or shoo them out, and they would just like run underneath the dresser or into like a little corner in the wall or something like that. I reported it to maintenance and said, hey, we have mice in our dorms. I don't know if you can do anything about that. And maintenance was kind of like, yeah, man, you're gonna have mice. That's part of the deal. In some ways, a lower quality of living than I was expecting. When I'm not living in the Xanterra dorms, I'm sleeping in my van, which honestly is preferable a lot of the times. On weekends, I would often go take the full 2 days and go exploring different parts of the park. I wanted to see every single part of the park, so I just got like the park guide with the map on the back, and I just like crossed off every single point of interest that was on there. That felt like a very gratifying activity. Try to see everything, and I would just camp somewhere, like sleep in the van. I never camped inside the park because you need like a special like backcountry permit to sleep inside the park, which costs money. I'm not sure what it costs. And I think there is a possibility that as a Xanterra employee, you could maybe sweet talk your way into getting a free backcountry camping pass. But for me, I would just sleep in the public lands directly outside the park. Most of the surrounding area of Yellowstone National Park is Bureau of Land Management public land that you could just camp on for free. And sometimes I would just do stealth camping in town. So like in Jackson, Wyoming, Cody, Wyoming, or Gardner, Montana, I would just like find a quiet parking space to stealth camp in my van. And it worked out. I never got caught or anything. So that experience was great. Every single weekend was just delightful. I was in heaven. And sometimes it sort of felt like I'm just working for the weekends here, 8 hours, 5 days a week of dishes for one 48-hour experience of bliss. Of course, you have your time off when you're not working. So if you're working the opening shift, you have the whole evening. If you're working the closing shift, you have the whole morning to go for a hike and explore the park. So I tried to take advantage of that. There certainly were times when I was so exhausted from work. Like, let's say I'm working the closing shift doing dishes, and the dishes are so numerous and strenuous that I would be completely exhausted and spend the next day sleeping in, kind of sleep through breakfast, get up in time for lunch, and then spend the next couple hours just not even enjoying myself, just dreading the fact that I had to report for work and do another shift for that evening. That was kind of a bummer, but I think after a while I sort of got used to the work. I think I toughened up a little bit, became a little bit less of a crybaby about it, and just had more a sense of perspective that the situation is what it is. You get to do the work. It's not fun, but when you're done, and you get to spend the rest of the time exploring. That, and the fact that I worked the closing fall season, meaning that as this season went on from late summer into fall, more and more parts of the park would close and less tourists were showing up. So less people come into the kitchen obviously equals less dishes, equals a less strenuous working shift for me. So that was another very welcome change that gradually came over the season as the number of visitors to the park slowed down. My working shifts became much easier and more manageable. Another silver lining to working at back of house in the kitchen is that you are allowed to listen to music or podcasts or whatever in your headphones. You're allowed one earbud, so you can have one ear in, one ear open, so you can still communicate with your coworkers and such. I eventually found that to be a very, very gratifying experience. Initially, it was tough to find enough content to fill an entire shift with, because another issue is very limited Wi-Fi in the park. There's certain parts, like in the cafe area, and sometimes in the dorms, the Wi-Fi would work, but most of the park, I have no service, no Wi-Fi. So you better like download the stuff that you want to listen to on your off time so that you have enough content to listen to on the shift. So at first I was like just listening to podcasts and YouTube videos, the type of content I normally listen to when I'm working or whatever. I quickly found out that was just not sustainable, or I just couldn't download enough stuff on my phone that would keep me occupied for a full 8-hour shift. After a while, I got into a rhythm of listening to audiobooks. I would use Libby and Hoopla, which you can access with your library card to get audiobooks, and then I would download them when I have Wi-Fi and then listen to them on my shift. And so that was actually really fun, because I've wanted to be a person who reads books for the longest time. I've always wanted to be a reader, but I have such a short attention span that it's very difficult for me to get through audiobooks. So I've used this experience as an opportunity to listen to a bunch of audiobooks, and it was great. It was so much fun, intellectually stimulating, cool way to like force my undisciplined self to be disciplined. And oftentimes I would get through an entire audiobook in one shift. If an audiobook is like 5 or 6 hours long, say, then I could listen to the whole thing in one 8-hour shift. Sometimes I would take a couple breaks, either because I was kind of bored with the book, or I wanted to talk to my fellow coworkers, or sometimes because my ears kind of hurt from just having noise constantly pounding into them for hours and hours at a time. That is another concern that I had and still have, is did I do any permanent damage to my ears from listening to audiobooks at oftentimes full volume? Because when I'm working in the dish pit, the machine hums very loudly, and the audiobook's got to be real loud so I can hear it over the roar of the machinery I'm working with. The other accommodation besides housing is the food. I should say it's not free. Both your food and housing is not free. It's taken out of your paycheck, but of course it's much cheaper than what food and housing would be outside in the real world, or if you were, God forbid, if you were like a tourist and wanted to buy food from the cafeteria, like $15 a plate. The meal plan, again, similar to kind of a college experience. It's 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, cafeteria style food. You can eat whatever you want or as much as you want. And then the quality of the food is okay. It's okay. I am a vegetarian trying to be vegan. I'd heard before coming here that it's kind of impossible to keep a fully vegan diet. Things are just going to have cheese or eggs or butter in them. So I just sort of gave myself that allowance of I'm going to be vegetarian, not vegan for my time here. It worked out fine. Yeah, that is one thing I will say I really appreciate about the Xanterra cafeteria experience, is they always had a vegetarian option. Very much appreciate that. Very, very, very easy to be vegetarian. I feel like I could have even pushed myself to be fully vegan, kind of a not read the labels kind of vegan. It's like, yeah, I'll take that serving of green beans that probably has butter in it, and just not ask any questions and just still consider myself vegan. That is something I sort of regret about my experience here, is I really just allowed myself to go fully non-vegan and indulge in cheese. I kind of developed a habit of eating a bagel with cream cheese for breakfast almost every day, which was so delicious. Goddamn, I miss cheese. I miss cheese more than I miss meat. Don't tell anyone. My vegan card is revoked. And I'm sorry. They also always had a salad bar, so there's always access to fresh vegetables. Another thing I really appreciate, they almost always had just like raw carrots, broccoli, pea pods. They often had like chickpeas and black beans. So that's another thing that if I was a more disciplined man, if I was the best version of myself, I think I could have really, really not only stayed vegan, but also stayed healthy in my time here. I oftentimes told myself, okay, next time I get a meal, I'm going to avoid the cafeteria slop and just get salad bar stuff. Sometimes I did that. Oftentimes I sort of succumbed to my more lizard brain based desires and opted for the cafeteria slop. I think I may have like gained weight while I'm here. You kind of work a lot in the kitchen, like you're on your feet all day going back and forth. I guess maybe you work out your arms a little bit, scrubbing dishes. I certainly have done a lot of hiking. I didn't count the miles to see if I qualify for the 100-mile hiking club, but I would venture to say I probably hiked a good 100 miles in my 2 months here. I did not take advantage of the gym, and as I said, I often indulged in the cafeteria slop, which no doubt has a lot of fattening elements. Experience with people. That's another real regret I have, honestly, is I don't feel like I connected with people, with like people in my own dorm or just coworkers I was working with on as deep of a level as I expected I would. I've been in situations where you're kind of living and working with people before, again, like with college, or like I've worked at summer camps, or even just like a day job where you just see the same coworkers every day. I've often developed friendships with people, made friends, found people that I wanted to get lunch with, have a conversation with, go hiking together. I don't know. I tried early on. I would just like sit at a table with people that I knew from orientation or that I worked with and try to kind of start a conversation. And over again, the conversation would just go nowhere. It would just, I'm sorry to say, the conversations were just very boring and surface level and didn't go anywhere. So at a certain point, I sort of gave up and just ate by myself and listened to podcasts or audiobooks and went hiking by myself. I do feel like that is on me. I don't know, maybe I'm just a anti-social person. Maybe I have too much personal shame about my past or something like that. I really don't know what it is, because again, I've made friends before in other contexts, and I really did not make friends here. I do think it is just me, because a lot of other people did make friends. A lot of people found romantic partners here and started dating. A lot of people, you would see people all the time like goofing around in the kitchen and chuckling and laughing and having inside jokes. And I don't know, I tried to engage with that a little bit, but just again, like I don't see myself maintaining any lifelong friends as a result of this whole Xanterra experience. I regret that. Yeah, I feel bad. I wish I would have tried a little bit harder at the socializing game. Overall, in terms of the money, in terms of compensation, the job that I had was $15 an hour, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then the room and board cost, I believe the contract says it will not exceed $233 or something like that. Chalk it up to, they're going to take $250 every 2 weeks, so basically $500 a month out of your paycheck. My paychecks looked like maybe $700 some dollars. If it was a normal shift, it'd be a little bit more. If I had some overtime, it'd be $800 to $900 a paycheck. Less than $2,000 a month is what you're looking at. But that's including everything, right? That's like room and board is already taken out. So once again, you're not going to get rich doing this, but you get to live in Yellowstone. Granted, you're living in crappy dorms, but your backyard is one of the most beautiful places on earth. And who could put a price on that? I could see this being a really great deal for, of course, someone who's in transition, someone who's just moving around. Sorry, it's getting really windy. I'm not sure if the audio is going to suffer from the windiness of it all. You're not going to get rich, but you're going to have all your expenses covered, plus a little bit of money put into your bank account on top of that. If this was a job that I didn't hate, right? Like, let's say either I was able to like mentally transcend my distaste for doing dishes, or if I had like a different job, like being a server or working in the coffee shop or something like that, where it was just less unpleasant, I could see like, yeah, I could live here, man. I could just like live the rest of my life slowly making small amounts of money, but also having zero expenses, right? Like, the only time I would spend money in these past couple months is on weekends, when I would go into town and maybe get groceries or something like that. And then, of course, like just buying gas for my van because I'm driving around, because Yellowstone's a big place, so it's a lot of driving to see all the different sites. The other expense that, of course, you could indulge in is buying drinks, buying alcohol at the employee pub. There's a pub which is like the hangout place that a lot of employees really enjoy. You know, there's pool tables, and they would do like open mic nights and trivia and just like bar type activities like that. So a lot of people would go there, and I assume like blow a lot of their income on alcohol. I quit drinking about a year ago, so I didn't spend a lot of time at the pub. A couple times I did go. I just felt awkward for a while and then left. Again, that's on me being like an antisocial person, but if you enjoy drinking and hanging out at bars, which I know I'm in the minority there, I know a lot of people just live for that stuff. So if you enjoy drinking and going to bars, that is a form of entertainment that you can engage in, but I did not partake, and for that reason I was able to pocket quite a bit more of my money, I suppose, because I basically didn't buy food, because I figured I'm already paying for this meal plan. I'm not gonna buy like nachos at the bar on top of that. You know, I'm just gonna fill up on the food I already paid for. Oh yeah, one other thing that was sort of unique about my experience as opposed to other people's is because I drove here in my van. I had a vehicle. A lot of people who do Xanterra don't have a vehicle. If you fly in, they'll pick you up from the airport, as far as I understand it, and so you can like have your whole like several months experience without a car, which of course is a way to save money because you're not paying for gas or insurance or any of those expenses. At the same time, I feel like if I did the same experience but I didn't have a car, I would not enjoy it as much, because again, Yellowstone is such a big place. You know, like I was in Canyon Village, right? So you can hike from my dorms to the canyon super easy. There's several hikes just within walking distance of my dorm, my place of work, which is super great. But there's so much more to Yellowstone that is not walking distance, that's 20, 40, 60 miles away. And it would be kind of impossible to see the whole park if you did not have a vehicle. They do have like an employee activity program called YSERP, which is I'm not sure what the acronym stands for there, but they do activities all the time where it's like, hey, we're taking a busload of people to Old Faithful, or we're taking a bus to go thrifting in Cody or something like that. So you could sign up for that, take advantage of that. It's sort of a hassle because you have to make sure that your days off of work align with the activities that you want to do. Otherwise, you can't get on a bus and be gone for the day if you need to show up for work that evening. That's not going to work out. Camera ran out of memory, so I'm going to change locations and get a little bit closer to the fire. As the sun sets, it's getting colder. All right, so yeah, just final thought, whether it's worth it or not. Because I had the vehicle, I really enjoyed the freedom that gave me, the fact that I could just drive anywhere I wanted, see any part of the park that I wanted to check out, just have total autonomy and freedom. Also, the fact that I could just sleep in the van. So if I was going to be away for an entire weekend, I slept in the van every single time. I never paid for a hotel, or I never even paid for a campsite, because I could just camp on public land or do stealth camping for free. One of the awesome things about van life that I absolutely love, it's hard to imagine me paying for a hotel at this point, because it's so nice to not have to pay for things. If you come here and you don't have your own vehicle, you're not going to get to experience as much of the park, and it's going to be a hassle. Like if you need to buy groceries or get some kind of supplies in town, which is a couple hours drive away, you're going to need to beg your friends to give you a ride on their day off, and it's just less fun experience if you didn't have a vehicle, from my perspective. Yeah, overall it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. I know I made a lot of content complaining about the quality of work, the fact that just working in the kitchen is super unpleasant and I kind of hate it. I stand by all of that. All of that is true, but I also recognize that, once again, that's on me. That's me being a total pampered softy, just not used to work. No one wants to work anymore. I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad I had this experience. I think I can even chalk up the unpleasantness of work to character building, I can muster up some boomer energy and say it's good for me. It builds character, whatever. Not sure that I'm ever going to do it again. Not sure that I'm going to work specifically for Xanterra again. I definitely don't think I would come back to Yellowstone, just because once again feel like I've seen almost everything here. Of course, there's always more to explore, but yeah, I would rather check out a different national park or natural area than just come back and do Yellowstone again. Yeah, I certainly miss the creative work. I was able to do some freelance graphic design, animation stuff with the limited Wi-Fi I had here. Kind of wish I had pushed to do more, but again, it's difficult to maintain contact with clients when you have such limited access to Wi-Fi. So yeah, I guess I'll give myself a pass on that. Yeah, man, the Xanterra era. It's been a thing. It's one for the books. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, like and comment and subscribe. What am I doing here? Yeah, why not? Again, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos about the whole Xanterra experience in preparation for my time here, so hopefully this can be helpful for someone who is wondering whether or not this type of experience is for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer any questions you have. Hopefully I covered the basics. Yeah, love you so much. Kisses. And I'll see you in another video, I guess.